Hello, everybody. Last week, charging systems. This week, starting systems. So we're going to go over all the pieces and how they work and electrically what goes on and what's inside them and the designs and all that good stuff. Again, I'm going to save all the testing and stuff to be one big giant kind of bunch of fun. There's going to be a video that I am going to add in all by itself rather than record it in this because it's going to come out better. I want you to watch it. It is old. It is awesome. The principles that they talk about are exactly what goes on inside these things. And you will get a real good picture because way back when they made that, they didn't have computers. So this was all done with real models and stuff to try to get it through. So I think you'll find it really cool. You'll laugh because it certainly is old, but I think you'll really like it. Okay, so let's get looking at this stuff. All right, so we got a starter. All starters have the same pieces, but there's some different designs between them, and we'll look at them a little bit later. This piece on the top is called the starter solenoid. Now, you know I harp on you all the time to know how a relay works because that's what that is. That is a big relay that operates the big giant motor on the bottom. It works with the same principles, but there's some other pieces inside it. Okay, so the bottom is the motor, the top is the solenoid, which is the relay. The big aluminum thing around it is the housing, right? Something's got to be the framework for this stuff. And then the part that actually engages the flywheel inside the transmission housing area, the bell housing, is called the starter bendix. That's the part that actually goes in, engages, and has to get out of the way once the car starts. The pieces of the starting system are the battery. Remember, the battery has to be in good shape for anything to work, and this is included. So the battery is part of the starting system. Actually, you know why a battery is so giant and heavy? Because of the starter. When they figure out how to, well, they already know how to, but once they decide that they're going to use different technology to get the car to start, the battery could be a fraction of the size. You're going to see it in your lifetime. Okay, so the battery is the biggest part of this whole thing. The battery cables and the wires. You got wires that go to the solenoid. You got the extension of the battery through a big heavy battery cable that goes to that starter so it can use all the power it can get. The ignition switch, which starts the whole Megillah, right? You turn the key, it starts to happen. So the ignition switch is a big part of it. The starter solenoid or a relay and or both. My Silverado has both. It's got a solenoid on the starter and a relay that relays the signal down to it. So like two relays. The starter motor itself, the starter drive, which is what engages the bendix into the flywheel. The flywheel ring gear, that's the toothed gear that is connected to the crankshaft, and without that, it doesn't work. Actually, it sounds like this, zing, because there's no gear for it to engage with. And then a starter safety switch, because has anybody ever experienced a manual transmission car when it was in gear and you turn the key? You go for a little ooh, and your heart skips a beat, and you possibly crash into your wall or into a swimming pool. Right? So we have to have something that prevents the vehicle from starting unless certain conditions are met, meaning you push down the clutch, you put it in neutral, you put it in park, something like that, so a car won't start and drive. Now, this is kind of interesting, and I bet you none of you ever thought about this. The starter is normally a 0.5 to 2.6 horsepower electric motor that develops just about 8 horsepower for a very short time when first cranking a cold engine. You never thought about that. So when you hear about high torque starters and things like that, and I have a couple of those, they put out more than 8 horsepower to really get that vehicle to crank over without any hesitation. The ignition switch. Okay, so let's look at a wiring diagram here. So if we look at the top, right? And this is just one style here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more and make it a little bit bigger. You can see we have a battery. You can see the negative cable is grounded, G101. We start with a 60 amp fuse up top. A lot of times these big giant fuses are the ones that save the vehicle when you decide to jump start it backwards. But anyway, 60 amp fuse. You can see that battery power is connected to it. It goes through the 60 amp fuse down into the ignition switch. You can see when we turn the key, we have an accessory, lock, off, run, bulb test, and start. When you first turn the key on, right before it starts, you notice all the lights turn on your dash, and it's a bulb check is what happens there. So we turn the key to start. It comes down. Here's the starter enable relay. Now notice this is the high current side. You don't see the low current side. Most vehicles, the PCM sends a signal to this starter enable relay. And once that's satisfied, we then send current into, if it's an automatic, a neutral safety switch. If it's a stick, it would go into a clutch switch. So you can see we only have a connection through park and neutral to go down into the starter. There's no connection through the rest of these, and that's so we don't start it up and all of a sudden take off. You'll see down here, we're connected, and you can see we have two sets of windings, pull-in windings and hold-in windings. Same kind of windings that would be in a relay. You're going to see how these things work. Now you notice that we have a ground connected over here. You see the pull-in windings are connected over here, and you notice our heavy battery cable is connected over here. So we turn the key, this becomes magnetized, this pulls in. The other set of windings hold it in so it doesn't disengage until we're ready, and that signal goes into the motor itself, which is grounded, and turns away. I want you to notice, it's the first time you're seeing this now. Notice these terminal numbers on the starter. B stands for battery. S stands for switch. M stands for motor. And we're going to reference those as we go through everything else.